Just when Melbourne fans thought things couldn't get any worse, it was leaked that their superstar and Christian Petracca has become disillusioned and disenchanted with the club. At the time of making this, he is yet to come out and say the reports are not true, and even Melbourne themselves in a letter to their members made no point to discredit Petracca's current feelings. The really concerning aspect was that Tom Morris reported Petracca, if possible, would ask to be traded to another club next year, but with 5 years left on his current contract, that won't happen, and it also may be a fake threat of sorts used to get the club really focused on the changes needed. If Melbourne stay off and on the field in the same form next season, you would think the fallout will be severe. Perhaps the build-up of Petracca's frustration has been over a couple years, but the 4 broken ribs, lacerated spleen and punctured lung he suffered during King's birthday surely has ramped up his concern about the whole club. It didn't help that he returned to hospital not long after with appendicitis. He seems healthier now, even returning to the club recently, but the mental and emotional toll of the trauma he faced was serious. It was seen on AFL 360 in his couple of appearances, and his family was unhappy with the way the medical staff treated him. Pair this extremely traumatic medical event with the off-field circus of multiple players, the results on the field, and the actual way Melbourne play football, it's not hard to see why their superstar is less than thrilled. Who knows what percentage each of these factors has had in him becoming disillusioned, but we all know Petracca is an ultimate professional, and when he returns, will be chasing that second premiership. It was also fitting that at the same time Alex Neil-Bullen has requested a trade back to South Australia. It doesn't look good, but both him and the club have made it clear that the reason for the move is for family circumstances. Take away all the other distractions, and Melbourne do deserve credit for the way they have handled this situation. It's been professional, and they will honour the request of Neil-Bullen. His 160 games and part in the 2021 Premiership team will have him in high order at the club forever, but it's a big blow for the future. He's a fantastic teammate from all reports and a very good AFL player. He's mainly played as a half forward since 2021, but at Adelaide, where it seems he is headed, he could easily play as another on-baller, a run-with player, or even on a wing. At 28, he is in his prime and takes away another player from Melbourne. The rumours about Jack Viney and Keziah Pickett also keep rearing their heads. It's unlikely either of them will depart, but again, adds fuel to the fire, and there does seem to be a feeling with other AFL clubs that some of these Melbourne stars can be picked off one by one, according to the midweek tackle. Another killer blow was that Dan Houston, who was still a 50-50 on leaving Port Adelaide to come back to Victoria, will not be joining Melbourne. This was a 180-degree turn, as it seemed the D's would be his landing spot if he requested a trade, but with all this negative news surrounding the club, it surely had an impact. But all of this seems to come down to Melbourne's favourite word, culture.
But they volunteered the word culture, cultural or culturally 37 times in that interview that they chose to do in a pre-recorded fashion with SEN last year. Simon Goodwin, Gary Pert used that word 37 times in a 20-minute period. He's used it again today. Max Gawn has spoken about it. He spoke about it at the best and fairest. And I'd argue that the one way out of it, or the starting point out of this mess that they're in, is to acknowledge that their culture is not good, to at least acknowledge that publicly.
Petracca is the embodiment of a strong one, while teammate Clayton Oliver has been the poster boy for one not so great. He's done for the year with multiple injuries and was never set up for success due to his manic and bizarre off-season. He in many ways represents the 2024 fall of the Demons. The board and coach have continually backed in their culture as one of high performance, but from the outside, you just can't take that seriously. Does it have an odour of a club that looked over potential issues because they were winning? Possibly. Clayton Oliver's issues, Joel Smith getting caught with drugs in his system on game day, accusations of workplace bullying, and continuous rumours to do with Simon Goodwin paint a picture of a messy club. And when it's reported your best player, who as a senior leader is disenchanted, it adds all together and makes sense. But what has gone under the radar are the many issues Melbourne actually has on the field. Although their 54-point win over Gold Coast over the weekend was impressive, it's not really fooling anybody. Let's just start with the game plan itself. Melbourne began the year with 4 wins and 1 loss but got patchy. They were marking the ball more than they normally would and clearly were trying to shift their game plan. But after that Fremantle loss by 92 points, they shifted back to what they know best, contest and defence. To be fair, it's all they could really do. The forward-line mix isn't great, and May and Lever are still premier defenders in the competition. Throw in Max Gawn roaming behind the ball, and you can see why they decided to go back to their old ways. But when you play like this, without any forward half flair, it is boring, and when you don't win, we all see the effects. Melbourne crowds of late have been brutally low, and it has to be some concern. For a club that has 70,000 plus members, these crowds have to tell them a message. The fans aren't coming partly because they aren't winning, but also, who really wants to watch a team with the mantra contest and defence? For the year, Melbourne are 14th for goals and 15th for shots on goal per game. Their game plan worked for a couple years, but look at the best teams in 2024. It's all about ball movement and speed, and it's something stylistically Melbourne surely will look to improve on in 2025, even if they don't win a whole lot of games. At least they have blooded plenty of youth. Jacob van Rooyen has played another 20 games as a key forward, Judd McVie and Blake Howes have featured in defence, while Colton Tholstrup, Daniel Turner, and the gem of them all in Caleb Windsor have also been regularly seen. It's important to at least see some positives in a poor year, and the move of Trent Rivers on ball should be exciting and productive for the future. So what are some things Melbourne can do this off-season to try and get things back on track? Well, it seems as if they have already committed to a formal sit-down with Petracca and most likely other leaders to point out some issues. It's a great idea and should get everyone in alignment of the problems. Then the solutions are up to them to forecast, and from the outside, we can't really predict what these cultural type shifts will be. But from what we can see, here are a couple possibilities. First of all, it's got to be the last shot for Clayton Oliver. This was only year 1 of his mega 7-year contract, and it will be his most pivotal off-season and pre-season. If he can't keep himself in order, it's hard to see him at Melbourne. Would a club like Geelong trade for him? It's a real option, but from reports, Oliver seems stable and ready to fully commit to the Ds. Any other players not professional enough or misbehaving should be given a similar proposal. If a large group of players can't adhere to the standards, then how can the club have them around? Then on the field, tactics need a do-over, not just from a winning perspective, but from supporters enjoying watching Melbourne play, whether it's Goodwin changing himself or getting in another assistant for ball movement and offense. It feels like a good point in time to shift. There are many young players not embedded in the old Melbourne way of playing and could add flair to the older players who've had to play the contest and defence model. Do they have the personnel to make a dramatic shift? Probably not as this video is released, but you may as well try. There is no doubt that Melbourne will be the club that has the most eyeballs on them in the off-season. Melbourne in some ways has dug its own hole, and now we all wait and see how quickly they can get back above ground.